It's all yours.
Great. Thank you so much. Good morning, everyone. It's nice to see everyone, and thank you so much for having me this morning for Coffee and Conversations. My name is Leanne Belasco. I'm the Director of Music Therapy at Leanne Music. For those of you unfamiliar with Leanne, we are a community music organization that provides music services, both lessons in 22 instruments and voice, along with group classes in a wide variety of areas, everything from early childhood to ensembles to lecture series. So I invite you to check out the offerings that we have at Leanne. There's a lot going on we have campuses in Maryland, DC, and Virginia, and the closest one to Arlington is in West Falls Church. So I do invite you to check out all the things that we have going on at Leanne. One of those programs that we do offer is music therapy, and that's why I'm here today to talk about music and health and wellness in general. So I'm going to share my screen and get started. So, for today, I'd like to share a few different topics with everyone. And the first one is, why is music good for us? I'm sure we all have anecdotes and stories related to music having a positive impact on us for the better, but why is that? So, I'm hoping to share some insights with you examining how music does impact our brains, our bodies, and our overall well being. I also want to share some ways where we can engage with music on our own with intentionality and purpose, knowing those benefits of music engagement. And time permitting, I also want to look at music therapy as a profession and how it applies to certain populations or certain settings, especially diagnoses and different topics related to things that we might experience as we age as well. But the first thing I want to start with is, why music? We all have connected with music since before we were born. If you think about it, we heard womb sounds and our mother's heartbeat before we were born. And then we're exposed to lullabies and sing song conversation as we started to grow. And as we were developing in early childhood and as school age students, we learned our ABCs through music. We learned nursery rhymes. We learned how to interact with our environments using music on a daily basis. As we got into our adolescent and teen years, we use music as a way to mirror our emotions, to express the things that we're going through, for better or for worse. And music becomes a soundtrack of our lives, especially in those pivotal years. And as we move into adulthood, music starts to mark certain events, certain memories, milestones, and moments. And music also throughout our lives creates depth and also more meaning for daily living. Imagine a world where music isn't played for every store that we enter, no matter the time of year, or isn't the soundtrack for a blockbuster movie, or isn't picked to celebrate a life changing event. And what would a parade be without marching band? And so scientists are looking at ways in which music impacts us and impacts us individually and as a whole, and the way that music experiences are stored in our brains and how its elements can actually change our brain makeup and impact us for the better. So there are a lot of different ways where music can positively impact us. And the first of which is with mental health and well being. And I think that's one that we can all anecdotally relate to, right? Music can inherently make us feel better. When we listen to music, especially music that we enjoy, our brains release dopamine into our system, which makes us feel better in general and also can give us the chills when we're listening to music. Music is also inherently social. Since the beginning of time, society has used music to have rituals, to work in social settings, to tell social history and oral history throughout time. And so there's something about group music making that not only increases that social connection and decreases loneliness, but really synchronizes folks together into a community. Our breathing might even synchronize when we're singing together or making music together. Our mood also improves when we're making music together. We are social creatures, and making music is a wonderful way to engage together as a group. Music can also improve quality and length of sleep. So you might find yourself benefiting from listening to music before you sleep or while you sleep in order to help with that quality and length of time that we're able to sleep. And music can also encourage physical movement. When we add music to exercise or to physical activity, research shows that we can exercise for longer and with more consistency and with better quality. And so we use music a lot in physical rehabilitation alongside physical therapists, occupational therapists, to help really motivate individuals in their rehabilitation, but also to encourage that movement and to encourage activity and physical engagement with the support of rhythm and music. Music also can manage stress. Music decreases the stress hormone of cortisol, which immediately decreases our stress levels. And on the physiological side as well, music can regulate our blood pressure and our heart rate. Especially if we're working in medical settings, we're really watching those monitors and watching those levels of patients that we're working with to see where their levels are and where they need to be and how we can impact change through music. And we do this through something called entrainment. And that happens when our internal body rhythms are synchronized with an external stimuli like music. So if we're meeting with someone who has an elevated heart rate, an elevated blood pressure, we might play music that matches that rhythm and matches that tempo where their heart rate is. And we might slowly bring that down and slow down our music to help connect with that person's body rhythms and impact change for the positive and bring that heart rate down. And we can do that in the opposite direction as well. So that's a really concrete way where we can see music having an impact on our physiological well-being and health, especially in a medical setting. But overall, you might find yourself with an elevated heart rate and use music to help connect with your internal body rhythms and kind of bring that rhythm down as well. And finally, music can promote memory and emotional recall. Musical memories are some of our longest lasting memories in our brains. Imagine everything then that is stored alongside of a song that might have marked a particular moment in time and what memories are attached to that song. Things like people, places, um, emotions, and imagine how we can tap into that, especially as we age, and how we can pull those feelings and memories just through one song. Just think about any song that might come on the radio and all of the things that immediately you associate with those songs. And the great thing about it being so long lasting in our brains is that it has that impact longitudinally across our lifespan as well. So, one thing that I do want to mention is that our own soundtracks are key to benefit. Research shows that our preferred music has the most benefit for well being. One question that I get asked a lot is certain kind of music, let's say, is hard rock therapeutic? And do you use that kind of music in music therapy sessions? And the answer is yes. If that is what connects best with the person with whom we're working, that's where we're going to find the most benefit. We are more motivated in engaging with music. We're more willing to actively participate in music that we enjoy. We're more willing to be in the moment for longer with music that we enjoy, and we benefit from more dopamine release with that preferred music. That being said, new music is also beneficial as a way to stimulate our brains, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. But this is a really nice way to connect with someone that might be experiencing some difficulty with memory loss, but listening to a song together that may pull from preferred music, especially from adolescent and early adult years, is a really wonderful way to kind of pull together that connection in the moment through something that is preferred and listening to something in a really meaningful shared experience. And we'll talk about that a little bit later as well. I also want to touch a little bit about on music, a little bit about music and the brain and how music impacts our brain function and different areas of our brain. Music is one of the only activities and one of the only stimuli that affects almost every part of the brain at the same time. So if you are looking at an MRI scan of someone who is listening to or engaging in music, you will see that almost every area is lit up at once, and not many other things can do that for our brains. And so imagine the possibilities of how this can promote brain connectivity, different parts of our brain working together and really helping us with things like working memory, things like speech recall, things like movement, and things like emotional expression. All of these things work together. And one of the most powerful ways that we see this is in stroke recovery, where language and expressive language might be processed in one area of the brain, but singing is processed all over on both sides of our brains. And so if we have an injury to the language center of our brain, we often see that individuals recovering from stroke can sing lyrics before they're able to verbally speak because of the way that music is stimulating all of our other areas of the brain that might not be affected and making new connections to work together in order to have that output. And even when we're not doing something like singing, if we are even just listening, music is beneficial because our brains are never passive. So we're always taking in that information and we're always making meaning of the music that we're listening to. Also, the structure of music helps us remember information. Regardless of our musical training, our brains know and are comforted by rhythm and by organization and patterns and chunks of information. And so if you think about all of the phone numbers that we might be able to pull out of thin air from commercials that we've heard over the years, there's a reason for that because of the way that information is stored in the melody and in the rhythm that we hear that locks it into our brain more powerfully than just spoken language sometimes. And so I like to give the example of learning the ABCs when we were children. Our brains didn't have to remember 26 different letters of the alphabet. Our brains learned four pieces of information because we chunked together letters into a phrase of music. So our brains learned four things: A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, O, P, Q, R, S, T, U, V, W, X, Y, and Z, which means that it takes up less space in our brains. And that's really beneficial for working memory and to make space for other things as well. So this is why music helps us remember information. And studies have shown that children with different learning differences are able to learn new words more quickly when they're paired with music than when they're just learning them verbally as well. And childhood musical study does have a long lasting impact on our brains. So, for those of you who had piano lessons or studied an instrument or played in the band or sang in the choir, that has a really long lasting impact on our brains. It really shows a positive response for auditory stimulation responses. So, think about if you are listening to someone, especially in a crowded environment, and when our nervous systems are sort of overloaded, and you might think to yourself, did that person say bill or pill or fill? When we're having musical study as a child, we're a little bit more able to discern those different sounds because of that focus on auditory processing through music learning. The same way musicians are able to actually hear better in noisy environments because we focus a lot on that connection between sound and meaning. So we're really able to focus our listening on the things that we need to hear and sort of block out things that might be overstimulating or impacting how we're receiving that auditory information. So I'm not going to go through all of this diagram, but I like to share it just to show that that really that highlights the different ways that music can impact our brains and really impacts every single area that we're working with. And so everything from the motor cortex when we're moving and when we're dancing, or even while we're playing an instrument, think about all of the ways that our hands and our whole bodies are involved in playing an instrument, especially something like the piano where we're isolating all 10 fingers at once and using our brains to really activate things in different directions at the same time. Our brains are really working in the amygdala whenever we're experiencing emotional reactions to music. And that's why we can process things like grief, things like trauma without verbal expression. We can do that through music because we're really activating that area of our brain. And the other part I want to highlight is the hippocampus involved in music memory. And so when we're working with individuals who are dealing with memory disorders or memory loss and Alzheimer's and dementia, we're really activating the hippocampus with those preferred songs so that we can really revive those musical memories and work in that moment with that person and with their families. So that's just a little bit of an overview of why it is that music is so important for us. So now I want to talk a little bit about how you can use music. And the first thing I'd like you to consider is, how is music a part of your everyday life? Maybe without even being aware of it. And my hope is that with our discussion today, there could be more ideas sparked on how you can use music in a meaningful way, um, at home and in your everyday lives as well. And the first thing to do is sing. And that may be something that might be intimidating for some of us, because singing is a very internal and very personal experience. We are using our internal instruments, right? We're using our voice to sing. But there are so many benefits, not only not only emotionally and with our mental health, but also with our physical health. There are so many physical benefits to singing. Think about the way that we use breath support to sing. And as we age, that becomes more and more important as well, not only for our lung capacity and for our respiration health, but also for things like volume of speech when we're talking, things like rate of speech and how fast we're talking. We really exercise those muscles when we're singing. And we also exercise our oral motor muscles whenever we're singing as well. So if we are someone living with Parkinson's disease, something like articulation and oral motor movement becomes really important. And singing is a really great way to focus on those areas of physical benefit as well.
And Leanne, we've got a
Yes,
comment here that the
sure.
breathing involved in singing is a great stress buster.
Yes, yes, exactly. And especially, we see that on our own, but then whenever we're singing in a group too, really amplifies that too. That is really a powerful way to really reduce our stress levels and really increase that dopamine production as well. It's really hard for us to feel both at the same time, right? It's really hard for us to feel stress and sing at the same time. So, yes, absolutely. So, also, singing has cognitive benefits. Learning new lyrics, if we're in a group singing environment, if we're in a choir, whether a casual one or an ensemble based choir, we are learning new words, we're learning new information and really stretching our brains and exercising different areas that's really helpful to us in the long run. And also those social emotional benefits, not only that stress release, but really that social engagement with others. It really affirms our sense of belonging and identity within a group. And that can be in a large ensemble, that can be in a place of worship, that can be in our car on a road trip with our friends or our family singing familiar songs. So I encourage you to not feel intimidated by singing, and to sing whenever you have the opportunity to do so. It's not about the quality with which we sing, it's about those physical acts of singing that helps us and helps our entire bodies and brains. The other thing is listening. And we talked about our favorite songs, right? That can help us manage stress, anxiety, and also release that dopamine and have a really positive impact on our mood. Trying new music is a different way to stimulate your brain in a different way. So I encourage you to look at applications like Spotify or Pandora or Apple Music, where you can listen to different playlists. Or if you pick a song that you like, then it might give you suggestions of all sorts of other things to try. And I think that that's really powerful to give ourselves new experiences. And you might find a new genre or a new artist that you didn't know that you would respond that way to. And the same way with live concerts. I know that in the last handful of years, there have been a lot of concerts and performances that have been put on YouTube for access in your own home. And I encourage you to check things out, look at an opera that might have been posted, or watch a musical, or watch a concert of an artist that maybe is new to you. And this is a really great way to exercise our brains, and also gives us a lot of benefit as well. Like I said before, our brains are never passive. So we're learning and engaging even when we're listening. And music can impact your body rhythms too. We talked about the physiological impacts of our of rhythm on things like heart rate and respiration rate, but think about your body rhythms throughout the day, and think about how music can be a support to how you're feeling throughout the day. Think about if you need to if you need some support waking up in the morning and getting your bodies going for the day and really increasing, having a playlist that might start with a gentle wake up, right? A gentle alarm and start to increase that energy and tempo to really energize you for the day. And on the opposite side of things, at the end of the day, to start a relaxation playlist to help bring those body rhythms down to a place that can relax and regulate and be ready for sleep and rest at the end of the day. The other thing I want to encourage you to do with music is move. Movement is so essential for our health. It's essential for walking, for balance, for swallowing, for breathing, for decreasing fall risks. So, movement of any kind is really essential. And like we mentioned before, music can help really emphasize that movement, support our movement, and make it more enjoyable for us as well. Um, it with exercise, music increases our motivation to exercise, and we can exercise for longer and for better repetitions. So the next time you're taking a walk around the neighborhood, maybe try listening to music as well and see what kind of impact it has on you, and try to pick music that matches your movement. And so depending on how fast you like to walk, maybe try to find something that matches that tempo and that energy level. You don't want to play something that's extremely relaxing when you're trying to exert some physical effort, but then you also don't want to play something that's so energetic that you find yourself, speed walking to the end of the block if that's not your intention for that day. Um, Music also impacts our physiological needs in other ways as well. There was a study that was done with adults with hand osteoarthritis whose treatment involved playing the piano or the keyboard 4 days a week for 20 minutes a day. And the results of the study showed a decrease in their arthritic discomfort and significant improvement in their finger dexterity and strength and velocity. And as an added bonus, the participants enjoyed the structure of the treatment because it added benefit to leisure time and also increased socialization and all of those social emotional things that we've mentioned today too. So there's a real benefit to adding music for recovery, for rehabilitation, for all kinds of movement, um, and just for our overall physiological health in general. And the last area I wanted to touch on for things to do at home is to play or learn. It is never too late to learn an instrument or a new song. Learning a new, even if we haven't picked up the piano, haven't picked up an instrument or played the piano in a number of years, it's not too late to reinvigorate that connection with an instrument because it really does activate different brain circuits. It really forges connections with other people and really brings us joy in many different ways. And studies have also shown that our musical ability really remains strong through our ninth decade of life. And so learning music later is possible and it is a wonderful experience. And that's why we have also organizations that encourage adult instruction on new instruments or someone new to music learning in general. So I do encourage you to explore, maybe try something that you've always wanted to try but haven't yet. Um, and so we're also seeing that more research is being done in this area to help support that notion that picking up a new instrument as we age, how that affects our brains and how it affects our daily functioning as well. So I do invite you to learn something new.
Okay, and we've got a
Yeah.
comment that was made earlier that addresses that. She said she knows a lot of people who've taken up musical instruments late in life and have gone on to join bands, write original music, and perform. And her question is, are these people exceptional or are we all more musical than we've been led to believe?
Ah, that's a great question. And I think so much of that too is, I'll go back to this slide. I think a lot of that is has to do with our lived experience too. We have met so many adults with whom we're working in music therapy for a number of reasons, non-music related, like stroke recovery, like a Parkinson's diagnosis, like other health concerns. But something that we hear a lot is, well, I was always told I'm not a good singer, or I never tried, or I was made to play the piano and so I just disconnected from it. And so I think some of that relationship with music across our lifespan is based on our life experience, but also I think that it's really beautiful and wonderful, and the sky's the limit. I think as we also connect with ourselves and our identities as we journey through adulthood and really find other ways of expressing ourselves. So I think that anything is possible, and I think that's it's wonderful to see people learning new instruments, or even if it's not a new instrument, to join a band or an ensemble or a choir as a way to really expand and broaden those musical horizons. And who knows what will come of it. So
So if
thank you.
somebody in their 70s or 80s wants to learn an instrument, are there particular ones that you think are especially suited to older learners or others that you might discourage somebody from picking up?
I don't think that I would discourage any of the instruments. I think that just based on my own observations, I think that we have a lot of adults learning piano for the first time. I think that's a very accessible instrument as well, and can also expand how you interact with it. So you can play, you can sing while you're playing, you can play while a group is singing. So there's something about learning piano later in life that I think makes it very appealing. And I think that there are a lot of adults who also come out for voice lessons too, to reconnect with their voice and with singing as well. But I wouldn't discourage any selections. I think that also considering maybe physical limitations or areas where you might have other considerations for, finger strength, or, like learning stringed instruments, just might be things to consider and work with an instructor on how to make sure that that's a good fit for you.
Okay, we've got a couple of more general comments.
Sure.
One, somebody said it seems like all cultures have music of some sort, wherever you go and whenever in time.
Hmm.
And a related comment, somebody said they like all kinds of music and have found similarities in ancient music, say from Scotland related to Native American music and and some modern music.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I think something that is wonderful about music is that it really is an expression of culture, of experience, of community. And at the same time, it's been said that music is a universal language. And I think that it's a beautiful way to experience um, other places, other communities, and to really experience that expression through music, and connect in that way. And I think that's a wonderful connection to make. Um,
And
yeah.
you were talking about, taking your physical capabilities into account.
Uh-huh.
It's a comment here from somebody whose cousin was a professional guitarist who developed problems with his hands that made it impossible to play the guitar. So instead of giving up music, he switched to the harpsichord and he's still performing.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I love that. And that's exactly what I mean as well. That there are, we work with a variety of individuals who want to engage in instrument learning, but for a variety of reasons, sometimes there are barriers and there are difficulties. And so there are so many creative ways to adapt an instrument, to adapt how we're learning, to there are things that you can put on guitars that will um, form chords so that you can push a button and it will form the whole chord rather than having to shape your hand and push down 3 or 4 different strings at once. And so when we're looking at working with individuals with some physical limitations or coordination deficits, then we might use things like that to help bridge that gap between what their musical goals are and what also we can be working on, finger exercises and strength in the meantime. But there are ways that we can adapt and modify. And I love that because those are related instruments and that expression carries over too. So I think that's a really great example. All right. Well, I also wanted to touch a little bit about music for caregivers because I think this is a really important thing to consider, an important topic that sometimes doesn't get discussed enough. I think that we often talk about music for others and music for different settings and working with individuals who are experiencing different changes or different diagnoses. But I think it's also important to take a moment if we are caring for someone else, if we know someone who is a caregiver, that we also can use music for benefit, not only in our caregiver relationship, but for the caregiver themselves. And so one way to do this is to encourage memories and sharing, to strengthen bonds together, and to provide opportunities for meaningful moments together. One thing that you can do is play an important song, like we talked about before, from our adolescent period, from our early adult period. Ask questions to really spark those moments and memories and that connection in the moment through the vehicle of listening to a song together or singing a song together. In the same way, we can use songs that are topical, that might support the environment, support the season, support significant events that are happening to really assist in that reality orientation and having someone really in the moment, and talking about those events in the moment as well. And like we talked about before with being in tune with our body rhythms, we can use music for relaxation. That can be, relaxation with touch. That can be increasing energy levels on the other side of things. And also supporting activities of daily living. So, helping organize structure for routines, and having music be that cue of it's time for this activity in our daily living schedule as well. And encourage movement, whether that's big movement, whether that's small movement. You know, dancing in our chairs is really important and really helpful. Even dancing, just holding someone's hand and swaying side to side with our hands is really meaningful in a way to make that physical connection through music too. And in the same way, music can benefit the caregiver themselves with decreasing stress, decreasing anxiety, strengthening those positive connections where there might be feelings of helplessness or feelings of frustration or anxiety of anticipatory change, but to strengthen those positive and meaningful connections through music together. And I put on here a resource that I really love and recommend for anyone um, who is a caregiver or is in a caregiving situation. Music memory and meaning, how to effectively use music to connect with aging loved ones. It's a really wonderful resource written by 3 music therapists who break down a number of different songs that you can share with a loved one and questions to ask, information about the song to share and have as discussion jumping off points and things like that, and really help to guide the use of music in an intentional way, to help spark those conversations and really strengthen those bonds.
So, on a related topic, we have a question here. Does
Yeah.
your program include training bedside singers who are people that sing for people who are dying?
So our program at Levine does not do that. So music therapists have specific training to work with individuals across the lifespan of music therapy. I think you're also referring to music thanatologists who might be working with individuals who are in the process of dying as well, and that's a different training too. So in music therapy, we're really working on non-musical areas of need through music intervention and not limited to or specific to singing at a bedside. It's something that we do in medical settings, in settings that might be in senior living communities or in hospice settings and things like that. We absolutely work in those settings as music therapists. And our goals may range from working on connecting with family members, to creating legacy projects, to decreasing pain, to cognitive stimulation, and everything in between as well. So it's a little bit of a different um, area of study.
We have a request for you to put the info on the Music, Memory, and Meaning book in the chat. So
Oh, sure.
let's remember to do that before we all sign off.
Yes. Well, I'm just making a note so I don't forget. Okay. All right. So we do have a little bit of time if there aren't any more questions at the moment. Um, I do want to talk a little bit about, I wanted to make sure that we talked about the benefits of music, and how you can use music in a proactive and health and wellness intentional way in everyday living. I also wanted to touch a little bit on, and I think that question was a great segue into what is music therapy as a specific profession. And then I also want to share a little bit about neurologic rehabilitation, and then how to find a music therapist as well. And so this is a very big definition of music therapy. And the reason that it is so specific is because there are so many professions that involve the therapeutic use of music in different capacities. And so for us, our profession really centers around musical engagement between a credentialed music therapist and an individual who's working on non-musical goals. And so we might be working on motor skills or cognitive skills or speech and language and communication, or all of the above, through music experiences. So while music learning may be a part of our treatment and a part of our time together, it's not necessarily the primary goal unless it is for that individual. So there is an area of music therapy known as neurologic music therapy. And many music therapists work in areas where we are working with individuals who may be recovering from stroke, or have experienced traumatic brain injury, or who have are living with Parkinson's disease. And we look at those specific neurologic impairments and how music can impact our brains for things like motor rehabilitation, speech and language and communication, and cognition. And so I just want to go through a couple of the common areas just so that you have a brief understanding of how music can impact specific diagnoses. The first one is stroke recovery, and we use music a lot for individuals who are recovering from stroke. Primarily, like we talked about before, speech and communication. If an individual has impairment in their language center, we can work on speech and communication through singing first, and regain that speech, and also work on functional speech. So setting functional phrases, I need help, please, um, with music so that we can help that person functionally communicate. Even people who are years post stroke and might be living with aphasia, we can work on that with music as well. A lot of through singing too. Um, and adding rhythm to help slow down and recover speech patterns, and become to slow down our rhythm and have more articulation when we're speaking too. Also, motor movement. We use music a lot with gait training and rehabilitation. So if we are impacted from a stroke with our motor centers and we're having difficulty with walking, then we might use music to help strengthen areas that might have deficits so that we can get back to a smooth and even gait. And that's when working with rehabilitation teams is really helpful and important too. Also, cognition and mood and pain management are really important ways that we access music therapy interventions for stroke recovery. We also work with individuals with Parkinson's disease, and we find that we work in sort of 4 different areas, the first of which motor rehabilitation. And we see a lot with gait and with our stride when we're walking, that rhythm, even just playing a metronome with a beat, helps immediately train our muscles and our bodies to know when and how to move. And so if you've seen videos of individuals with Parkinson's who might freeze at a doorway or on a curb or at a change in flooring, if we can implement a metronome and a beat, or teach the individual to internalize a beat by tapping their leg or counting a rhythm, then we see almost immediate entrainment and movement with the beat. So it really has a strong impact on motor rehabilitation. And dancing is extremely helpful too, and it's fun. So really a long lasting benefit for rhythm with Parkinson's disease. Communication, we've touched about on this a little bit before with breath support, with volume, with rate of speech, with articulation and intelligibility. We use a lot of singing exercises, oral motor exercises. It might look like a voice lesson, but we're really targeting specific needs for that person and their journey with communication needs that comes with Parkinson's disease. Cognition, we also that is a common denominator as well. You'll see a lot of these same goal areas just manifested a little bit differently based on the need of the individual. We work on memory recall, attention span, singing familiar songs and trying to fill in the blanks with lyrics and really having that cognitive stimulation. And also mental health. So addressing things like anxiety, like fatigue, maybe sleep deprivation, depression, social isolation. We can really address those mental health needs with music intervention as well. And the other area I wanted to make sure to touch on is music therapy for individuals with Alzheimer's disease and different related dementias. And we talked about the preservation of musical memories that are in there for longer than other skills and really last even through late stage dementia. And so we see that individuals can often remember songs from their youth, and brain imaging studies have demonstrated that those memories activate brain areas that are spared until the very late stages of the disease. And so music related activities might boost memory a bit in individuals who are living with Alzheimer's disease or dementia. So that's a really important way that we can connect with others and in general improve quality of life. We also see that mental health benefit of decreasing anxiety and depression. We see that there is the ability to work with someone with non-pharmacological interventions when we're looking at things like anxiety and depression, because we know how music can impact our brains and our bodies. And so we're able to do that in a way um, that is not as impacting medication wise as well, for things like anxiety and depression. And something that's really important is reconnecting with our sense of self and identity, not only internally, but as a group with our peers, if we are in a community where we have caregivers, and really reconnecting our sense of self and identity with that person too. And so we've seen a lot of positive impact on communities where we're engaging regularly with music, and that love for music and that improvement of quality of life is so bright that it really strengthens that caregiver bond as well, because we're having these positive experiences in a way that's brings about a lot of joy in a shared experience. And we also talked about the activities of daily living before, as well as caregiver benefits too. Okay, so when should you access music therapy? Specifically, if someone has known interest in music or has shown positive response to music, if they're not making progress in other therapeutic modalities, and music might be able to help with that. But musical ability is not a prerequisite. And I cannot stress that enough, not only for music therapy, but for everything we talked about this morning about just accessing and engaging in music on our own. We don't have to be professional musicians with years of experience to benefit from music and music engagement. So I encourage you to engage as much as possible. You can find a music therapist through the American Music Therapy Association, and our credentialing body is the Certification Board for Music Therapy as well. And the other thing that I'm going to put up on the screen is just my contact information, and I can copy that in the chat as well. But then I will take this down in a minute and I'll copy and paste it in the chat so that we can have some time to share without the slides in the background. And I'll also find the link for you.
Okay, well, we've got a question to you specifically. What's your background and how did you get involved in music therapy?
Yeah, so that's a great question. Thank you. I have played the piano since I was about 5. And when it came time to pick a career path, I was looking at different ways to engage with music and what that might mean for me. And I grew up in a very rural area, have never heard of music therapy, but it sounded intriguing. And so I studied that as my undergraduate degree. And right away from my very first semester, where we have the opportunity to shadow music therapists in the community, and knew right away I had one opportunity to shadow a professional who was working with children on the autism spectrum, and just knew that this was the path that I was supposed to be taking. So I studied the flute in undergrad as my primary instrument, but as music therapists, we also have to become proficient in piano and guitar and voice, because those are the primary instruments that we use in our clinical practice, um, especially piano and guitar, so that we can accompany ourselves on voice as well. And then I started working in at a non-public school for children on the autism spectrum, and went back to school for my master's degree in special education to more further understand the individuals with whom I was working, and ended up coming to Levine in 2011 with their music therapy program, and really enjoy the community model of being able to work with individuals from every community, with a variety of abilities, a variety of experiences, and a variety of settings. So that's my 30-second journey.
Okay, well, first off, it's about 8 minutes to 11, just so you
Mhm.
know. Um, and you talked about the instruments you have to be proficient in. Do you have to be able to read music, or can somebody who just plays by ear become a music therapist?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think that we all have different music learning strengths, and I think that because music therapy is um, it's a full degree program where we oftentimes are involved or included in a music department at a university, where all of those core classes involve musicianship and theory and understanding written music and how to analyze it and how to write it, and how to play it, of course. But I think that all of that background theory is really important in our studies as well. So I think that reading music is, I don't know if it's necessarily a written prerequisite. It probably depends on the program, but it's definitely something that is needed, I think, for being able to then write and transpose and things like that. We do a lot of composing with our clients as well, and that might happen on paper or with software. So I think it really depends on the program for training wise.
Earlier, you had mentioned having a daily playlist,
Mhm.
and we had a comment here from Steve that he plays Pandora on shuffle in the evenings. So, you know,
Yeah.
there's so much music that's readily accessible these days.
Yes. Yes. Sometimes technology is very frustrating, but I think in that avenue, it's wonderful because there's such, and it's wonderful from the music therapy perspective as well, because we're able to access client preferred music. Like someone had mentioned different meaningful music from different cultures, and maybe we're meeting someone for the first time who has a preferred type of music that we're unfamiliar with, and it's a way that we can forge that connection to start with, while we then go and do our homework and learn some of that music that we can share together. But that access to music is incredible.
All right. Jim posted a quote from The Merchant of Venice, but I don't see that he's still on. I was going to ask him to read it for us.
Oh.
Basically, it is the man that hath no music in himself, nor is not moved with concord of sweet sounds, is fit for treasons, stratagems, and spoils.
Hmm.
So,
Thank you for sharing that.
yep.
That's a great quote. I just put the name of the book in
Okay.
the chat as well. Um, and I can also put that's a link to Leanne Music. Like I said, we have a lot of instruction and classes for adults, as well as a music therapy program. And then I put my email there as well for reference and contact if anyone has further questions or would like to talk about music therapy for a loved one or things like that too.
How many patients do you have in music therapy typically?
In our program right now,
Yeah, yeah.
so in our program, we serve probably around 300 individuals. We have a team of 3 music therapists. We work primarily at our campuses one-on-one, and then we work in the community with preschool students and elementary school students in school settings, and then also with adults with developmental and intellectual differences in groups in the community, and then also in senior living communities as well, where we do group and individual services in memory support neighborhoods, as well as skilled nursing communities, and individuals in senior living communities in general. So we really do see the whole lifespan, which is really a really great reminder of how music really can impact so many different individuals.
Got an anecdote here. Somebody who sat behind a young child, about 20 months old, who was in church for baptism, and the parents were attending the child's twin sister. The grandparents were trying to take care of the kid who was just crying and inconsolable. And it said the pianist began the prelude, and on the first note, he stopped crying. But it was
Mm,
like a miracle.
mm-hmm,
So,
mm-hmm. It really is powerful in so many different ways, and it's really also encouraging and fascinating to read about in recent years how much is being done in research in neuroscience to see why that happens so that we can help encourage that in so many different ways too. So it's really nice to see that combination of all of those anecdotal evidence that we know that music is important and understanding why so that we can really um, make the most of it too with all of our individuals and families.
now, some years ago, there was a lot of people were playing music to their unborn children,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and then I think that whole Mozart effect kind of got debunked. What's the thinking on that right now? Is there a benefit to that or not?
Yeah, so I think there's always a benefit to music exposure and engagement. And like we mentioned before, even without something like listening specifically to a certain kind of music, we are experiencing music and rhythm um, in the womb regardless, right? And so I don't know that there are specific studies looking at what types of music to play or to listen to, but I think that music exposure is really important no matter age or before being born as well. Even thinking about working with expecting mothers on humming and singing lullabies so that you're not only exposing to music but starting that connection through your voice, and really strengthening that bond before the baby's even born.
Okay, well, I think we've gotten to all the questions and comments, and it's almost 11 o'clock. If anybody's got any final things they want to ask, now's the time. Otherwise, I guess we'll thank you, Leanne. This was fascinating. I certainly got a lot out of it. And I think we're all going to be listening to a lot more music this week,
Great.
having heard you talk. Um, And with that, as Wendy said, our topic next week is the Arlington County Sheriff's Office. So the sheriff's going to talk to us about what they all do in that department and who they are. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and stop the
I think
recording.
somebody has a hand raised.
Oh,
I was saying bye-bye.
oh,
Oh,